What's going on? Russ Dorsey from Stadium joining us with the pretty background. Russ, good to see you, man. Let's keep the Otani conversation going for a sec. So, any updates, and do you also enjoy the entertainment of seeing all of the insiders kind of like throw random stuff out there game by game, being like, he's going to get traded. Wait, they're decent, and they're only like 4 games back. Now he's not going to get traded. Okay, now he is. Where are you standing on what you're seeing right now? Because I think the game by game stuff's ridiculous, and I mean they're not making the playoffs.
I think so. First things first, the business of being an insider is really unique, right? Because you do have people telling you things very often, and things change by the day in baseball. And as we get closer to the deadline, day to day, if a team wins, if a team loses, it's always going to change. Do I think the Angels were ever going to make the playoffs? No. I'd be lying to you if I told you I thought that they would. And it sucks because you have Mike Trout, who's been the best player of his generation, and Shohei Ohtani, who's doing things we've never seen done in the sport, and they haven't reached the postseason. And the analogy I like to use is Shohei is like a Ferrari. He's like having a Ferrari. He's one of one. But you know that in a couple of months, that Ferrari might get taken away from you. It might get repossessed. So do you trade in that Ferrari for a fleet of other cars that could be very serviceable to you, very nice cars, but it won't be your one-of-one Ferrari? And I think when you look at the Angels and where they are, if Shohei walks for nothing, it might be the biggest mistake we've ever seen. You can't let that guy walk out the door without getting anything in return.
Kit? Did we lose Kit?
Nope, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, you're here.
Put myself on mute for a second. My question for you then is, at what point, with only making the playoffs one time with Trout, I think they're not. I'm with you. They're not going to make it this year. What does Artie? Where's the line that he thinks? Okay, now it's time to trade. What does he need to see? How many games back of the playoffs this year, or where do you think the point will be that he reaches in and be like, okay, it's time to trade?
Kibby, you've been in the business a long time, right? Sometimes it's like hours before the deadline, right?
Yeah.
The day before, where an ownership group, a front office will be like, you know what? It's just not working. And you probably are starting to lean one way or another as we get a week or two before the deadline. But at the same time, maybe somebody comes in with an offer in the final hour that blows you away. That happens all the time where a team is saying, we're probably going to end up keeping this guy. Another GM calls you back and is just like, hey, we'll throw in the guy that you want if we can make this deal happen right now. That's something to me that is always a possibility. I think for Artie Moreno, I think it is a pride thing at this point where it's just like, we got this guy. We got him to come play for the Los Angeles Angels, brought him over from Japan. He's turned into everything and more that we thought he would be when he came over here. To give him away, it feels like the biggest loss, right? And you had teams that called the Angels about him last year when they probably should have traded him with more time of club control, but they didn't. And then this year you're like, oh, everybody's all in. We got to win. We got to win. Trout, we got to win. How do we keep Otani? We got to win. And then the same thing happens at some point. It's very similar to what the White Sox have going in Chicago, where it's like you keep banging your head against the wall thinking that something is going to change, and it doesn't.
Yep.
Well, Russ, before we talk about how the White Sox are going to sign Otani in this offseason, since you brought up the White Sox, I'm going to go there. Yeah. It's not going to happen. But I was in New York all weekend talking to a bunch of people, and at the All-Star, we saw you at the All-Star game and having some conversations with people. And this question was brought up by me and other folks in the industry. Do you, when Otani becomes a free agent, whatever team signs him, Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Seattle, Giants, whoever it is, do you have to get a clause in the contract that says you have to pitch and you have to hit? Because what's stopping Otani from signing a $600 million contract, $60 million a year for 10 years, and then he goes a year and goes, I don't want to pitch anymore, I'm just a DH. And then that contract goes right to shit. Is that possible?
It's really interesting. It doesn't seem like he would do that, but then again, you never know. I think the unknown is something that makes us so curious.
Let's say he blows his arm out again. Let's say he hurts it, and God forbid he gets hurt. But let's say he throws the ball in his shoulder and he tears his rotator cuff and he can't pitch anymore. Right? Now, different than him saying, I don't want to pitch anymore, but he does that. Then that value, again, of 2 players for 1 is gone. You're paying him $60 million a year to be a hitter and a pitcher, and that's gone. So, that's kind of why I'm like, do you have to put an option clause in there or an escalator or incentive-based stuff? It's going to be weird to see how a team financially handles this.
Or maybe that's where insurance comes in, right? Like we saw the Steven Strasburg deal where my guy Jesse Doherty from the Washington Post reported that they didn't get that contract insured. With everything we had known about Steven Strasburg's history with injuries, they didn't insure his deal after they won the World Series in 2019, and they're going to be on the hook for that whole thing. I think the same thing would likely have to be insured with Ohtani's next deal. And yeah, the premiums are going to be through the roof, but this is a player that we've never seen before. But my thought also on, if he blows out an elbow or a shoulder and he never plays again, wouldn't you then try to, for athletic as he is, for him being able to do as many things as we've seen him do, wouldn't you just try to play him in the outfield or put him at first base if that was an option afforded to you?
But that's not a $60 million a year player. You're paying for 2 players, right? And 1.
For sure.
That's the thing. And can you get insurance only on pitching? What happens if he's a DH and he hurts his elbow? Then do you, God forbid, then do you get insurance on the pitching because he didn't hurt his arm not pitching, or he slides into second and hurts his shoulder, right? That's why it's so fascinating, because there's so many ways you can twist and turn this and make it into what if he does this, or what if and there's always these what ifs. And again, I don't want to see him get hurt. I want to see him keep doing what he's doing. But if I'm the owner of a team, again, if I'm Jerry Reinsdorf and I go, Shohei, we're going to sign you for 10 years, $600 million. But I need some assurances that you're going to pitch the whole time, and if you get hurt, how do we back it up? It's fascinating. It's just fascinating problem.
Can I jump in on that?
Please.
I think that's the risk you take. Signing any player, his injuries and all that stuff. For us, AJ, that's the beautiful part about guaranteed contracts coming from the player.
Yes, but the difference is, Kip, we never were gonna make as much. And there wasn't the two-way aspect, right? There wasn't the hitting and the pitching what makes it. That's why it's so crazy.
Well, yeah, but okay, that's the risk you take. But then also the beautiful thing about Shohei is, let's say he has a shoulder strain and you don't get Shohei the pitcher anymore. Unlike any other player in the league, you still get value out of him because he can now still be the hitter for you. You still get half that player, half the guy you're signing for. Otherwise, if it's a pitcher with a shoulder strain, you don't get anything from him. With Shohei, you still get a powerful DH. I think that's where the risk becomes worth it, hopefully, for the contract.
That's a good call, because right now I wish Anthony Rendon could pitch for the Angels.
But you still get something out of him.
You get something, but you don't get what you're paying for. You see? But I'm saying, what if he doesn't get injured, and after a year he's just like, fuck it, I'm tired of pitching. It's hard. It's wearing me out, because he always says pitching's harder than hitting. Man, I get blisters every time I pitch. Oh, my elbow's sore. Whatever it is, I don't want to pitch anymore. I just want to be a DH. And you're like, well, listen, dude, we paid you this amount of money to be both, and now you're just giving one up. There's no assurances, and I don't want to say he'll do that, but he could.
You're absolutely right.
That's what I was.
Case.
I was going to agree with Kip. It's like the calculated risk that you have to take. Like, we all know how amazing Shohei is, but you got to know, with any deal, the Angels giving Anthony Rendon what they gave him. Is that a risk? At the time, it looked like a pretty good bet. A guy who hadn't really been injured before, a guy who'd been a really talented player and been on a World Series winning team. And then the guy comes to LA and he gets hurt very often, right? Mike Trout, you give Mike Trout over $400 million, the best player we've ever seen, first ballot Hall of Famer. If he stopped playing right now and he signs that deal and he hasn't played 149 games since 2016, it's part of the risk that goes into it. And so I think that teams that there's only going to be a certain amount of seats at the table. For me, talking to people around the game, there's only going to be so many teams that really get that true meeting with Shohei. And so if you're one of those teams, you got to know that there is going to be some risk that goes into it, whether he blows out his arm, whether he stops hitting, whatever. But and I had a executive tell me this before the season started, you're signing a $300 million pitcher and also a $300 million hitter, which is why you get to the round number of $600 million. But with that, you just have to know, hey, if this thing doesn't work out, it'll just be one of those things like, man, oh, well, that sucks.